busy guy, man. You get around.
Yeah, I can't sit still. I'm an idiot. It's my own fault.
Well, I mean, I was just talking to the guys before and kind of doing research for this interview. I realized you're a very public figure within the extreme metal community. I think everybody realizes that, right? I mean,
yeah, sure. I guess I'm just like a normal dude.
Well, no, you're well. Maybe that's why, because you're a good dude. You're a normal dude. You got Decibel running up in your food truck. You got a lot of podcasts and bloggers trying to interview you, like us and everybody, man. And there's a lot of things available, out there. Everyone knows, obviously, you played drums in Human Remains, Discordance Access, Burnt by the Sun. Yeah, we could keep going with that whole thing. And Municipal Waste now, Slouch. So I just thought maybe tonight, if we could go back into the history a little bit. I wanted to ask you some questions about growing up and your family.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, please do.
So, I mean, just starting off, I know, like, a little bit later on, before we get this, you did have an uncle who played drums and gave you your first sticks, right?
That's correct. My Uncle Victor. He's got the meanest shuffle in the game.
Prior to that, I mean, is there anyone else in your family that's musical? Do you have any musical persuasion before that?
My Aunt Mary got me into music.
What was Aunt Mary listening to?
She bought me a Pretenders tape and a Men at Work Cargo. Those were my first two cassettes.
Nice. Men at Work Cargo. Great record, man. That's awesome,
yeah.
man. Now, I understand from the research that you had actually an illness where you were paralyzed for 2 years as a kid. Am I correct?
Yeah, I had what's called Guillain-Barré syndrome.
And I mean, is it something that just kind of like onsets and goes away? Like, what was the deal with that? Like, how?
Yeah, it's temporary. The scoop with that is I wasn't fully paralyzed for 2 years, but I was paralyzed for a decent amount of time from the neck down, and it would set in overnight after I had gotten a cold, and it just destroyed my muscles and nerves. So I really couldn't do anything. I got up and jumped out of my bed and collapsed, and I was paralyzed.
Oh my God!
My parents weren't psyched on it. It was pretty scary, and I did a lot of research and did a lot of rehab and therapy and all that stuff. Relearned how to walk, and in that time, my uncle had given me sticks for my hands for therapy. So that's one of the reasons I started playing. But they think, conspiracy theories, this, that, and the other thing. People think that it's related to the swine flu or the vaccination.
All right.
It's like an after effect.
Wow, that's interesting, man. Yeah, I've never heard of that, man. But I did hear about that story. We wanted to ask you about that. So, your uncle gives you the drumsticks, kind of just as like a therapy type of thing, but then you end up falling in love with drums.
Yeah, I liked music, and I was trying to show some interest in drums. I think I was 10, so, and then he gave me sticks because I had to totally rebuild all the strength.
Yeah.
In my hands and my legs and everything. Yeah, I haven't gotten a flu shot since. Just saying.
Wow. Yeah, I'm holding back because I don't like to get any kind of political or controversial things off metal on the podcast. But
allegedly,
I've allegedly been very hesitant to get the flu shot myself. I only got it for the first time in a very long time when they told me I had to see my newborn nephew a year or two ago. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense for some people. I'm not on a crusade to tell people to not get it. It's not for me.
Yeah, no, I don't caution people any which way or the other, man. And I certainly do not profess to be the best educated person I know.
Do what works for you. Coming
exactly.
from the Heavy Hole podcast.
Exactly, man. But interesting to think about nonetheless, man. Now when you start to recover and develop your muscles back, I guess, and all that, are you actively pursuing like getting a drum kit and learning more about that, or like at what point do you decide I want to get a kit, and what is your first kit?
Well, I was riding a bicycle before that, and I was like way into BMX and all that stuff. And funny enough, I could ride a bike before I could walk again, which is one way I helped rebuild my legs. I was doing a lot of work in the pool, and then the bike made it build my legs back up, so I was able to walk maybe faster because of that. I'm not sure, but I got into biking, and drumming kind of like took a back seat. And, I kept getting hurt on the bike. And then, like, drumming was kind of there, but, just, like, kind of hanging out a little bit. I was always into it, and I loved tunes. But I realized that I wasn't going to get hurt playing drums.
There's no handrails and drums.
Yeah. Well,
So
you can get hurt. Disclaimer: you can
hurt
hurt yourself playing drums.
Yeah. I've almost poked my eye out and hit myself in the face with sticks plenty of times.
So
I think my least favorite drumming injury is when you go to grab a cymbal and the cymbal goes underneath your fingernail.
Oh no! Jeez.
That's terrible.
Ooh. Yikes, man!
No fun.
I never would have thought of that, man. I always picture maybe just like your typical joint injuries and stuff like that, man. What are other ways you've hurt yourself out on the road or playing shows?
Oh well, when you're going, another example of grabbing the cymbal, like grabbing it and actually hitting your hand by accident or your fingers. Those drumsticks hurt real bad when you get hit with them.
It's that hard wooden stick, yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've seen you live a few times. You hit really hard. So, for other people, it might not hurt as much, but...
I got to get some stuff out of me.
I wonder what that fingernail deal would be like on recording. Like, if you recorded just that symbol, and I wonder if it would just be a little extra trashy,
Put a little...
That does not feel good. The nail breaks and bend back, and... there's blood everywhere. It's not fun.
No, thank you.
Yikes, man. So 10-year-old Dave, or approximately 10-year-old Dave, recuperating now, interested in drums. When do you first discover any kind of heavy music, rock? Like, what is the first kind of music you discover that's a little bit off of just what's on the radio and what's out there commercially?
AC/DC is my first love.
Nice.
Awesome.
I love that band. They're the best band for me.
Akadaka. It's just Australian friend just for first names. Akadaka.
I would listen to music with my dad. He got me into like Muddy Waters and the Doors and Bob Marley. We would listen to Babylon by Bus and he listened to Joan Baez and the Moody Blues. And my dad had a pretty wide range of listening, mostly like folky kind of stuff, and then my mom was like a disco maniac. So like Brick House and all that stuff was on. That's when disco was tight because it was all band. It was a band. It was all people playing instruments.
Yeah.
And like the drum and the bass connection was so sick.
Yeah. The Gap Band.
That stuff's so great. You go back and listen to it. It's a marvel on how they made music like that. No one can do it better.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely, man. Now, all right. So let me throw this at you here, man. At what point do you notice the drumming of Brandon Thomas, of I guess at that time probably Ripping Corpse, the drummer of Ripping Corpse, because he's a fairly big influence on you, right?
Oh yeah, he's one of my favorites, if not my favorite. I got into tunes, and in high school I started like getting serious about playing. And, I met some guys from other towns and stuff like that. Started playing with some people, and then we started going to shows. And then I found out about Ripping Corpse. My friend Mike Evans actually hit me to them, and we went to this place in Rumson, New Jersey called the Underground. It was a church basement. And they played... And someone had played me the 1988 demo at the same time. And it blew my mind. I was like, oh, my God, there's a guy. Because I went and saw him. I was like, there's a guy here that lives a few towns away that's better than all these other guys than I like. Like the big bands, like Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, all that stuff. I was like, wow, there's a guy that's local that's even better. So I just fell in love with it, and I studied everything he did. It's a huge part of my learning, for sure.
Yeah, backyard hero, goes a long way.
He is,
yeah.
For sure. He's such a great guy. He's so talented.
Yeah, I was, I always loved Ripping Corpse. And the Dying Light, actually, but BioLitch, my old band, played a show or two with them years ago, man. But, I'd never really made the connection until I joined Artificial Brain. And those guys are all huge Brandon Thomas fans. Ripping Corpse, Dim Mak, Dying Light, anything that guy does was definitely played heavily in the tour van. And that's how I kind of got a better feel for that guy and his style and his bands. And also it got me thinking between him, between Ripping Corpse, really the whole band, and Human Remains, and then I noticed other bands later on in the New Jersey scene, maybe even Mortal Decay. There always seems to be this contingent of very interesting, unique, almost, I want to say like psychedelic or maybe just musically expansive death metal in New Jersey in the 90s. Is that fair to say? Do you see that?
Yeah, well, it all stems from, this is my theory on it anyway, but everyone was so influenced by Ripping Corpse. Like in New Jersey, the metal, aggressive death metal, it was like Ripping Corpse was the king. Everybody knew it. They could play better than everyone else. They wrote songs better than everyone else. And, with us and a couple other local bands, we were so influenced by them that we were caught up in trying to sound like them.
Yeah.
We wanted to be Ripping Corpse, but no one ever could be because they were the best. And then as time went on, people, us especially, we realized, yeah, we can do whatever we want. Why don't we just start doing some left field stuff? So that's how we were like a Ripping Corpse clone, and then we broke out of it.
All right, that's.
And then, I like to say that we had no idea what we were doing before anybody else.
That's awesome. So that's interesting to hear, man. And I always had a feeling that Ripping Corpse must have played a part, and it's really unfortunate. We did an interview with Colin Marston, where he brought up, I think it was Colin brought up that Ripping Corpse, somebody owns the rights to the music or something, and that's why you don't see reissues and things like that. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, Cray still owns it, and there's for some stupid reason the guy won't come off it more, because Relapse is ready to re-release it. They had everything all lined up, and I don't know, man.
Such a shame, man. People are really thirsty for that.
Terrible, yeah.
This would be the era for it too.
Yeah, the guy's sitting on stuff, and I don't know. It's really frustrating, but I have every format of cassette, CD in the boxes still. And when the vinyl came out, I bought it, and Scott, the singer, didn't have a copy.
Huh.
So I gave him my copy, what any normal person would do. I was like, oh, man, you're my friend and biggest influence, and you don't have a copy of your own record? I got to give it to him, so I gave it to him. And last summer, I finally found it in Germany, and
wow.
I rebought it finally.
Wow, that's a rare find, dude. That's crazy. I actually...
Yeah,
go ahead.
I rode past the record store and lost my mind. It was €80, and I bought it.
Oh, my God.
It was worth every cent.
Dude,
it's such an important record to me.
Me too, man. And unfortunately, when I was probably 12 or 13, I wandered. There was like a Hallmark kind of card and gift store by my grandmother's house, and I used to go in there because they had Metal Maniacs on the magazine rack, and there was a little cassette tape like bargain basket with I don't know, like who Tiffany's greatest hits and Prince or whatever. It was like, it was like the nice. Love and there's Ripping Corpse, Dreaming with the Dead on cassette. So my mom bought it for me, and that rocked my whole world. Then of course I left it in a friend's pickup truck a few years later and never saw it again. Nowadays I'm kicking myself, but yeah, really really crazy how that Ripping Corpse pops up, man.
Yeah, they're the best, man. See, I saw them live probably 100 times.
Oh,
and I used to go to rehearsals and watch those guys rehearse and write stuff and practice. And it was so amazing to be so close to that. Mm-hmm. Have something of that caliber a few towns away, and then eventually becomes friends with them. Those guys did everything for us. And Scott, too. Scott was older than everyone else, and he was like the sage. He was far more intelligent than anyone. And he also got me into the underground, gave me my first batch of flyers for zines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about that on the podcast a lot, how somebody just gives you a little packet of flyers and you're off,
Yeah, that was it. Scott gave me all that stuff. Scott got me, we jumped in that pool together. He gave me all the information.
So what were some of the first, who were some of the first people you were corresponding with and demos you got? Anything that we would know now?
Well, I used to write, there was a group of people that I used to write to, and actually, Anthony Bowman, I used to speak to on the telephone. I used to write letters with him a lot, and then we traded a demos, and Essa from Demigod, another Finnish guy, and then there was Paul Watson from this Dying Grief magazine from England, and there was this guy Fred from Belgium that sent me stuff all the time. I forget it. I fell out of contact with him, and then there was Paul Nielsen, who was an illustrator from Copenhagen. I still talk to him. He designed my first tattoo. I wound up meeting a lot of these guys when Municipal Wear started touring a lot. And I used to write with Anders, too, from At the Gates. And so I got all their demos and all that stuff, too.
Wow, man. So, I mean, obviously, all that stuff, but I gotta hone in on something you said. You used to speak to Auntie Bowman of Demolich, or Demolich, however you pronounce it, on the phone?
Yeah, my parents would get real bummed. The phone bill was astronomical.
That's awesome, man. From Finland, obviously. Wow.
Yeah, we've been friends a long time. What a great guy.
Yeah, oh, very nice guy, man. I've been.
Yeah, I remember when the record came out, and because he sent me both demos, and I would send him everything when we did it, and he was so excited to show me when their album came out, and he was wearing a Human Remains shirt. It was great.
So, speaking of like tape trading and stuff like that, what's your like prized possession from your tape trading days?
All the Ripping Corpse demos, because they're so important to me. I got the Entombed, I got Unleashed, I got like all Suffocation, a lot of New York stuff, Incantation, Mortician. There's this really sick band from Pennsylvania that was called Lesh Nyan. I got their demo, I like that a lot. The Cartilage demo from Finland.
Wow, cool stuff.
I love that. I got all kinds of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, we actually interviewed.
Kind of hard to fit. The Vader Morbid Reich demo was really great. Such a great demo, and it was one of the first demo cassettes that was full color, like 8-panel. Like they put a lot of work into that thing, and it was awesome. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I'm a big Vader fan, man. Always have been, and even their older material, man, which was definitely much more raw. And when you come to understand the history, weren't they like one of the first Polish bands in extreme underground metal?
Yeah. I used to write letters with him too, but I didn't keep up with him as much as the other guys.
Wow, man, that's amazing, dude. And you mentioned you had a lot of New York stuff. We did interview Chris Basile of Pyrexia.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, OG member, and he, he's actually even shared old flyers and talked very fondly of playing shows with Human Remains a lot in the old Pyrexia days, and even recommended one of your old Human Remains demos as his album recommendation when he was there on the show. Could you, do you remember coming out to Long Island back in the day?
Oh, all the time, yeah. We used to play Long Island a lot, and then Suffocation was like, and Pyrexia were like our brother bands for a stint, and Jason Fligman managed Human Remains for a short minute.
Yeah, actually, they just talked about Jay Fligman on last week's, the episode that uploaded last week with Chris of Pyrexia.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, Chris is great, man. We had so much fun with those guys, and we used to play with Morpheus a lot before they turned into Morpheus Descends.
Wow.
Rob Yench. He was like a homie. And Primeval. But yeah, the Suffo guys were always the coolest. And the Pyrexia dudes.
Yeah,
we played with them a lot. And we used to hang out with this guy, Tom Harms. He was a Long Island guy. And that's where I met Carlos, too. We wound up doing Black Army Jacket together years later.
Yes, kind of a...
We all went to...
Legendary band I was going to say legendary band for me being from Long Island and being into grindcore and in high school in the 90s, you know?
Yeah, it was fun. I remember we all made the trip up to Fleet's Festive Freaks at Club Babyhead where Infantego played. So we all went up there together. That was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. I guess maybe there was a guy that played drums in Black Army Jacket, I guess maybe after you or before you. I don't know how it was a guy.
Dan, before me.
Yeah, Dan. He was a few years older than me in high school. I didn't know him a lot, very well, but he was friends with some of the guys that would form Buckshot Facelift with me.
Yeah, Dan's a cool guy.
Yeah, man. And if you talk about those old Long Island shows, I'm certain that you guys probably played Sundance or the Roxy here on Long Island.
Oh yeah, both places. And I saw Candlemass, Atheist, and Ripping Corpse at the Sundance when Roger Patterson was still alive.
Wow, man. Yeah, both of those.
Yeah, I used to ride with Ripping Corpse a lot. I used to roadie for them, too.
Wow, man, that's awesome, dude. So where else did you go with Ripping Corpse? Did they ever do a lot of touring?
No, not really. They'd go upstate New York and Pennsylvania, and then Scott and I didn't go with Scott. We went to see the Nuclear Festival. It was me and Tom from Nocturnal, and then we met Sean and Scott down there because we all wanted to see Macabre. We were like, Macabre. Sean turned me on Macabre and changed my life.
As a drummer, that must have been amazing.
Yeah, oh God, Dennis is amazing. He's such a nice dude, too. I wound up becoming friends with those dudes over the years, and we'd play shows together. They're always fun to see.
Yeah, I've just had the opportunity I was going to say I had the opportunity to meet them once as a fan. Very nice guys.
Yeah, I was psyched. They saw Human Remains once. Dan, it was at the Wetlands, a thing called Death Stop, where Danny had called me to drum on Need to Control, the Brutal Truth album, and I had to say no because Human Remains was just signed to Relapse, and like that was my baby. Mm-hmm. So we were all playing Deathstock at the Wetlands, and Macabre played, and Danny introduced us, and he was like, "You got to watch these guys. You got to watch Human Remains," because they had no idea who we were, and they watched us. And Lance came up to me, and when we were done, he was like, "Dude, that was so fast. It was amazing." I remember that vividly to this day. He was really psyched. And it made, it made us feel like $1 million because we loved Macabre.
Yeah, no, of course, man. And, I think an underrated band when you talk about especially drummers that were pushing it in terms of extremity in the very early years. Yeah,
it's been the same. It's like the rush of gore metal or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. All the same dudes forever. Yeah. Those guys and Cynic were the most complimentary bands to us that didn't know who we were.
Yes, Cynic back too nowadays, man. Yeah, Macabre never left.
We played Long Island with them. It was like Cannibal Corpse, Sinister, Cynic, and Human Remains, and Internal Bleeding. We played shows with them a lot too.
Internal Bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had Frank Rini, who was singing for them in the '90s, probably during that era. Or maybe a little bit after that on the show, man. Yeah. I mean, those are the like we've said, those are kind of like the big three from Long Island from the '90s that people always know as Internal Bleeding, Pyrexia, and Suffo.
Yeah, Internal Bleeding, the inventors of slam.
Yeah. Contentious debate in some circles locally. That's all I'm going to say. Allegedly. Anyway.
I know all those. Everybody had their own twist on everything back then.
Of course, man. I kid, man. Yeah, no. Just interesting hearing all those kind of stories tie in because Human Remains has come up on the podcast, and while we're still kind of on Human Remains, man, we kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to ask you about while you're still getting into drums, Human Remains started while you were in high school, correct?
Yeah, we were this band called Final Judgment, and we wanted to be like Sacred Reich more than anything.
Awesome.
And then one guy left, and we met Steve, and we're like, let's just change it. Everybody was so into Clive Barker. Then it was real easy to, go into the Books of Blood and take everything from there. That's where the name comes from.
Yeah. We've talked about how nowadays it's a lot harder to come up with a name that hasn't been used yet, by another band.
Oh, it's almost impossible.
Yeah. Like imagine being able to name your band Grave.
Yeah, right.
But
Ryan from Waste got really lucky and named his band Bat. I couldn't believe knowing that the name Bat.
It was right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask when Human Remains started because you're still kind of learning drums, progressing. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because you're back in the old school days, you're in the late 80s, early 90s, learning how to do extreme metal drumming on your own. As you know, nowadays we have the advent of YouTube, and there's even probably video sharing sites that are just for drummers and things like that. And there's
it's amazing the tools that are at our disposal now. It's insane.
Yeah, and I don't want to pick apart unless you want to give your opinion about which is better, which is worse, who has it easier and harder. But could you just maybe take us through what it was like for you back in the day? If you wanted to study, say, if you got like a Death cassette and you wanted to study a drummer's style or something like that,
Well, it was back in the day. It was Mick Harris, like he was the dude. Mm-hmm. And then you had Pete Sandoval, who's the king. Like, he made the blast beat. Like, he was the king of the blast beat. Like, he was so great, so like on the money, like tight, faster than anybody else. Had the double bass, and then you had Mike Smith, Long Island represent.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
He was the first dude to play like that. But I remember he was the first guy to change it up.
Just a
And then
rhythmic powerhouse.
Yeah, and then you had Paul from Cannibal too, had his own take on it. He did a different thing. So everybody, and it, back then it was like, oh, you're a cheater using 2 feet, blah blah blah. You know, it was kind of funny. But at the end of the day, now looking back on all that stuff, so many different dudes had so many different ways of doing it, and it all worked. It was just different. It's how you applied yourself.
Do you feel like maybe
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm getting at is kind of like maybe back in the day, drummers evolved on their own in their own bubble in a way more. And because
there was nothing. There's nothing out there to look to. You know what I mean? You just heard it.
So
and everybody wanted to be as fast as Pete because Pete was the fastest. That's who made me want to be the fastest dude in the world. I remember at a point in time when that's why I just wanted to be the fastest guy ever. That's all I cared about.
And also all these drummers you mentioned, you also got Brandon Thomas in your backyard, and that's
Brandon wasn't really a blast beat guy, but he did them and he did them extremely well. Mm-hmm. But it was a small part of what he could do. Brandon's abilities were way beyond everyone's. Like he had it all. He was the total package.
Well, maybe
jazz, 4-way independence, double bass, like no unassisted dynamics, ghost notes, the whole thing. He was the man, and the creativity off the chart. That's what set him apart from everyone. He had a soul in him.
Absolutely, and again, just urging the listeners if they haven't to check out Ripping Corpse, Dim Mak, and the Dying Light if they want to hear about this drummer Brandon Thomas that we're talking about. And something that I picked up in the research too, he was taught by a jazz drummer named Bob Butterfield, right?
Bob Butterfield, yep.
Is there any
great drummer? Is really sick.
Is he a recorded drummer? A drummer that we could like research?
I don't think so. But Bob taught Brandon some stuff, and then like Brandon just like had a few lessons and just Bob showed him the basics.
Yeah.
And then Bob used to say that. He was like, I just showed him some stuff, and he was great already. He knew what he was doing. He just needed a little bit of something. And Bob was really good. I've seen him play a few times. It was really cool. And then he owned Butterfield Recording Studios in Red Bank, which turned into the Red Bank Rehearsal, which Jim from Human Remains had bought later on. So we were always around him, and it was kind of funny because Bob was a big jazz guy, and all these jazz cats were coming in and out. And then when Human Remains started really developing its own identity, and we were getting really, out there, they would come in. And they're like, "Hey, you mind if we sit in on your rehearsal and watch what you guys are doing?" It was really funny.
Wow, man, that's awesome, dude. It's really interesting.
They had never heard anything like that before.
Yeah. Well, even in death metal, no one ever heard anything like that before, man. I mean, and something I wanted to ask you about before was you said something you mentioned earlier in the conversation. You said that Human Remains and maybe other Jersey bands started out trying to imitate Ripping Corpse and then said, hey, we can do what we want, and we branched out. What are some of the other influences playing into Human Remains? Obviously there's not a lot of metal going on at that time, but like, what were you guys listening to, and what were some of the other, were you guys listening to like prog music or jazz? What were those guys into, and what were you into besides metal?
I mean, everybody loved metal, but Teddy liked a lot of like thrash metal. He was in a band called Eternal Aggression before Human Remains, and they were great. Mm-hmm. But we listened to a lot of stuff. Ozric Tentacles, Skinny Puppy, 9 Inch Nails, all the Volume 12s are pretty much from Alex Lifeson and Steve Vai. Those guys loved those, and like Jason Becker, Marty Friedman, Cacophony, people that could play the guitar. I don't know. We were influenced by everything, but the people that were virtuosos, really stood out. And Alan Holdsworth. Alan Holdsworth is amazing.
Yeah, great player.
Yeah, but the Volume 12 came from Steve Vai and Alex Lifeson specifically.
Wow, interesting to know. Okay, the first time I ever heard that, they were playing. They were playing the EP over the PA system at one of the first death metal shows I ever attended, and the volume swells to me. I could have sworn I would have bet money as like a 12 or 13-year-old kid that those were saxophone parts run through some sort of.
Yeah. People are like, "Yeah, what kind of pedals you guys use?" And they're like, "No, we don't have any pedals." They're like, "What?"
Yeah.
It was so bizarre because no one really heard about that. And you know, Alex Lifeson was the start of it though, because we were all Rush nerds, and he used to do that in a lot of the songs and the solos. And then Steve Vai took it, you know, went crazy with it.
Steve Vai made it sexy.
And then what's his name? Tom Morello started doing it, but he had like a toggle switch and a pedal and stuff. He wasn't really doing it by hand.
He had an 8-foot ladder filled with pedal boards.
Yeah,
It's a little different.
He was like nerdy street. Steve Vai made it sexual.
Yeah.
Bring it in.
He was the guitar playing stripper.
Yes.
And it's great stuff.
So, I also wanted to ask you quickly. There was another band that I didn't even realize you were in until I did the research. I Abhor Her.
Yeah, that's actually on the table to be reissued shortly. It's pretty soon.
Yeah, really obscure kind of band. I just remember having one track on some compilation a very long time ago. Weren't they New York based or like Staten Island based or something?
Yeah, Staten Island. It was Joey Capizzi and then Eddie. It was Joey and Javier. Javier played in Born Against. And
Okay.
then Javier and Eddie did Cattle Press together while we were doing I Abhor Her.
Yeah, it was kind of. I remember it was kind of like a cattle press side band or whatever. That was like the vibe, kind of.
Well, kind of, I guess, but I think I Abhor Her did a little bit more before Cattle Press. Cattle Press was just like a demo thing with the machine that Ed was doing with Javier for a while, and then I actually did a rehearsal with them. I thought I was going to play drums, and it just didn't work out because everybody was too busy. And then they wound up getting Dave Cruz.
Yeah.
And then that was the first drummer that they had. But those early demos with the drum machine that Ed did are so great.
Yeah, no, good band, man, and one of the few bands that I remember from like even from the East Coast because I was into a lot of that like quote unquote power violence and that the Slap-a-Ham Records type of scene where it was either like the fast grindy power violence or the sludgy stuff, man, and that was one of the few bands that you saw from the East Coast pop up.
Yeah, Chris was awesome. We asked him to put it out, and he was into it. I learned a lot from those guys. I learned how to play really heavy and hard with them because it was totally different than everything else I was doing was like technical and fast.
Yeah, it was more of a slow band, which is interesting for you.
Yeah, it was fun, and they showed me a lot, and musically and lifestyle. Those guys were the first vegans and vegetarians I met way back in the day. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know anything about Thai food, Indian food. Like I grew up in like very meat and potatoes and pasta and spaghetti, stuff like that.
Interesting, because that's like a very natural segue that I didn't expect. But we did want to ask you, Dave. Obviously, it's been well documented that you have the Go Vegan Go food truck. That's still a thing, right?
Yes, it is.
And have you expanded beyond the food truck?
Yeah, we have a brick and mortar now. It's called Hang Space.
Hang Space, and where's that at?
That's probably like 2 miles from my house in south of Richmond.
Okay, so just south of Richmond, Virginia. And where's the food truck usually park up at?
We do lots of stuff. We do First Friday art walks. We're at breweries a lot.
Mainly in like
special events,
like the Richmond
sometimes
area.
Oh yeah, it's all. We don't leave Richmond.
Okay, cool. And
the truck's old and won't really make it. We'll have to pay more money for a tow truck than actually making it.
You've done enough touring. That's okay. So tell me about the food truck, man. I mean, you mentioned like one question I wanted to ask you about it was like, I'm like a meat and potatoes guy. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you see me, I'm not much of a vegan myself. But say I roll up to the truck, I want to try something new. Like, what's your go-to recommendation for someone who's not that knowledgeable, maybe not the widest palate, and just wants to try something out?
Well, we were the first people to use the Beyond Burger. We've been using it since its launch for 2.5 years, and it tastes so much like meat. A lot of people are, they question whether it's meat or not, and they like it so much. A lot of people that think they'd be put off by it. We have 2 different burgers on the menu all the time. They're really good, and we have the fried fish tacos that are made from soy protein. And then the number one seller is this thing called, we have the not so pad thai fries. It's French fries with this amazing, it's red and white onion, sprouts, cilantro, scallions, 3 different sauces, fried onions, and peanuts. Oh man, they're delicious.
Sounds
People
amazing.
go crazy for those.
I'm sold. Yeah.
Have you ever had a Beyond Burger, Will?
No. I'm gonna have to.
You got it, because I guarantee you've had worse actual real burgers. You know,
I'm gonna have to put
Beyond's good. I prefer it.
Yeah, it's clean. It's nice. You don't feel like so.
I'm gonna have to put my money
Clogged.
where Dave's food truck is, and put the Beyond Burger where my belly is, and try that.
Yeah,
out.
Beyond's great. We prefer it. And when it first came out, it was such a nightmare because it only had it at certain spots, and we had to drive all over the place just to have some to sell it. It was such a pain in the ass because we weren't big enough to have a distributor.
Oh, wait a
So,
minute. Is that's the same thing that they got at like Burger King now?
That's the Impossible.
Okay, I'm
It's
sorry.
different.
All right, I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, is it like
No, that's
Impossible's
okay.
like
There's-
more imitation meat, when Beyond's more of like a plant based? Is that kind of right? Like
They're both plant based, and one's GMO and one isn't.
okay, all right, that makes sense.
Ah, okay, all right.
So,
Alle-
yeah,
Yeah, there's a
allegedly.
lot of information out there.
Like Impossible's trying to grow the meat, if you will.
Yeah, it's like both of them are when Impossible launched, they straight up came out and were like, yeah, the diet's secondary. We want to try and save the world, change the environment.
Okay, I get it. So one is more environmental, like going green, and one is more like this is better for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, they both have the same standpoint where they want people to consume less meat and agriculture and all that stuff. It's a big debate. But for me personally, I feel I stopped eating meat like two and a half years ago, something like that, and I feel great, and I really like the burger a lot.
So here's another question. Just on the same note, you said before you didn't grow up in this lifestyle, eating this way with this diet. What are some steps? Because something I like is that, when doing the research, I saw you on the food truck, getting interviewed and talking about this, and saying that you're not, at the time, I guess, of the interview, you're not a vegan, but, you do eat a lot of vegan. So it's like you don't have to be, this isn't like a strict religious lifestyle switch that you have to make overnight. What are some things that people...
No.
Yeah, well, like...
Yeah, you phase it out. Everybody's body's different, and, here's something a lot of people don't talk about, that some bodies just can't have them that are allergic to soy, or some it sounds strange, but some people just can't be vegan for health reasons or vegetarian. They need the meat protein that no other thing's going to do for them.
Yeah,
it's a select case. It's not for everyone, but that's the truth.
Yeah,
everybody's body's different. It's not. Sometimes it's not going to work.
Yeah,
Because
we're
I've had
somewhat
hardcore-
spoiled by society in that fact. Back when we were hunting and scavenging as humans, you needed to eat meat. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. But now, the science of it's changed, and so it's not for everyone, like you're saying.
Yeah, it's way different. Like the options are so, because I love food, and now the options are so plentiful. It's super exciting because I used to go out and eat the craziest things I could find, and I got that out of my system. I did all that stuff. And, vegan and vegetarian food just happens to be the most exciting thing for me the last like 4 years or something like that. There's endless possibilities, and one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is like vegetables, and there's a lot of stuff that's actually vegetarian and vegan by accident. Just like it's vegetables, you know what I mean? Rice and potatoes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Vegan. It's vegan from the beginning, and people are like, "Oh, I'm not eating vegan food." It's stuff you already eat.
Yeah, you
know what
already
I mean?
eat that half the time anyway.
Yeah, they're just afraid of the name.
Yeah, I want to get back into some of the earlier band career stuff with you, but since we're on the topic, coffee. You're a big coffee
I love
man.
coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
You, in fact, with Brain Tentacle, put out a coffee with dark matter coffee, correct?
Sure did, and so did Municipal Waste.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I fell in love with coffee in Italy when I was jumping from Melbourne. I had my first espresso.
In Italy, wow.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god! Like I didn't get it until then. We had Dunkin' Donuts. you're drinking this light and sweet stuff like super sugar bomb, and you wind up shitting your pants half the time afterwards.
Yeah, so are you still chasing that high of that first Italian espresso?
Oh, I went out right away and bought a Bee Lady machine and some Italian beans and brought them home, and I've been hooked ever since. And coffee's crazy. They're doing so much great stuff with it. You can do anything with it now. Different roasts and back to dark matter, like you said. They're infusing different yeast strains in the roast and letting them ferment pre-roast. And those guys are super unique, very passionate, and I love them. I love everything they do. And they're super duper supportive of the arts.
Well, I gotta get my hands on some of that stuff. Try it out.
Yeah, you can go to the website and order it. They're from Chicago. They might even be distributed in New York. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll check out their website, see if they have if they sell locally. But I mean, I get everything shipped here anyway. So
yeah, they did a Judas Priest coffee.
Gotta try that. Maybe a little leathery tasting.
yeah.
Any
Grinder.
Grinder. Wow, it writes itself. Any plans to expand beyond like the restaurant business and maybe open up like a coffee shop or something like that?
I don't know. We're the only people that carry dark matter in Virginia, and we're carrying the cold brew. But we're not selling enough coffee, so we can't really be a coffee shop. And we have it there for people, but there's straight up coffee shops here.
Wow.
If I was going to expand, I think I might want to make my own chocolates because I'm crazy about chocolate.
Jeez, man, I can't keep up with you, Dave.
Yeah, I've always been chocolate's been my first love. I would stop drinking beer before eating chocolate.
And I know that we could talk beer with you too, right?
Yeah, and a lot of great chocolate is vegan naturally as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else in it, just like straight up dark chocolate roasted cacao.
Wow, man, a lot of knowledge here, man. And we, as I always say on the podcast, we do want to be respectful of your time. But we could keep going talking about all this different good stuff. I'm getting hungry and thirsty here, man. But I can already tell. Hopefully, we can have you back for another session for a part 2 in the future, Dave, because there's a lot to get into, man.
Yeah, come down and eat at the truck too. Check it out.
That's an idea.
That would be a delicious episode, if I don't say so myself. I did want to ask you though, just a few more questions about the music, and we've barely even cracked the surface. I mean, we haven't really even gotten much past Human Remains. But maybe we could just close out and wrap up a little bit. I just wanted to talk about Human Remains because you put out a number of demos, and there's the story about the Metal Blade demo, and I've actually heard the rumor that you guys weren't signed to Metal Blade for the reason that not all members had long hair.
Yeah, it was appearance. Totally, that's true.
Wow,
really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's fun. It's also ironic because look at today's climate. The last decade.
Yep.
Like we truly were way ahead of everyone else and had no idea what we were doing. For real.
I have a rumor. I've heard a rumor, and maybe you could shed some light on this. Speaking of being ahead of your time with Human Remains, do you think that could have something to do with Gorguts and the way they changed their sound at some point?
Oh, absolutely. Luke will be the first guy to tell you that.
Yeah, I had heard that from a friend, and it does make sense. Something clicked. I was like, oh,
yeah, we saw Gorguts, we were playing the Pyrexia rehearsal space. And Luke was there hanging out with the Cepho guys, and he was partying, and he saw us, and it blew his mind. I think he was doing some psychedelics.
Allegedly.
So
yeah, it was a long time ago.
In.
But he still tells me that. I love him. He's one of the greatest people on earth.
Nice.
So
guy.
nice.
Yeah. Good dude.
I love his music. But he said that we were responsible for him, rethinking things. It was a big influence.
It's no longer
and
a
that's
rumor.
a complete honor.
That's not a legend. Yeah.
Yeah, if you ask him, he'll tell you the same thing.
Wow. Yeah, we're gonna work on getting him on the show at some point too.
Yeah, we've reached out to.
Oh, he's great. He's a lot of fun to talk to.
Yeah. It's just for the listeners, we get a lot of recommendations of who to interview, and trust us, we got a list a mile long. We only got so many days in the week. It's tough, but and we appreciate your time, Dave. So you guys, and also just for listeners interested in the whole, because this hair thing has come up, how in the late '80s, early '90s, whether or not you had long hair or a shaved head meant a lot, and could even be a point of contention that could get you into a fight back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, it was really gnarly back in the day. We used to go to Lamore's and we'd go see Chromax, and Teddy was the only guy with really long hair, and he almost got beat up real bad a few times.
Yeah. Chris Basile Pyrexia told us about getting clotheslined by skinheads going to see the Cro-Mags years ago and things like that.
Yeah, that stuff was for real, man. That wasn't like there was a grudge there.
Yeah, and like
Silly grudge, and everyone knows now that it's foolish.
Yeah, interesting now, man. How image has changed and isn't even really an issue, most of the time, man. So you guys do end up signing to Relapse, though.
Yeah.
And the Relapse puts out Using Sickness as a Hero, and the band was still around for that, right, when it was released?
It came out right after we split up.
Okay, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously, as fans, we're curious about what happened.
You know what it was? We were so young, we had no idea what we were doing, and we just stopped doing it.
Wow.
Like everyone was changing. Mm-hmm. Everyone started to have different musical influences, and like I don't know, it just didn't work out. We were so young, we didn't know, like I said, and we just kind of grew apart. And I left, and then Steve left, and I remember talking to Matt Jacobs, and I called him up and told him, and he was really bummed. I love Matt; he's an old friend of mine, and he was like, "Well, I can get you on the Harmony Corruption tour as main support. Would that make you guys, stay together?" And I was like, "Nah, we're done." We should have did the tour.
Oh my God, what if you remember the What If comics, man, Jesus.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It would have been cool if we did a round, like in the United States, to actually see what it would have happened.
Yeah, and maybe just for the listeners, because something that I've brought up on the podcast, actually something that your friend and mine, Dan Gargiulo, has brought up in conversation is how.
Welcome.
Yeah, we love Danny, and we are going to get Danny on the podcast. And Danny was instrumental in hooking you up with the podcast too, man. Obviously, so shout to him. But
you own the pizza.
Yeah, will do, but only a Long Island style slice, right?
Yeah.
But something he always brings up is that a lot of these classic death metal albums that everybody worships from years past some of them were recorded when the artist was like in their teens or early 20s. And it's kind of weird to put that in perspective, being in your 30s and still listening back to this amazing album, And for the listener's perspective, how old were you guys when Human Remains broke up?
22, 23, something like that, maybe.
Jeez, babies. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, in the big scheme of things,
24.
babies.
These are like your sports
maybe
heroes.
24. Yeah, I don't know. It was early, man. We were pretty young, man. Entombed was really young when they recorded too, and they were teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, and it's something.
Let Them Pass. They were all young, really young when that came out.
Yeah, and something Justin just mentioned. It's a lot like sports heroes who live on and like as legends throughout time, and a lot of this is all stuff that was accomplished in maybe like 3 or 4 years in their early 20s.
Yeah, we burned real bright, and then we didn't know what we were doing, so that was it.
Well,
we really didn't know, man. That's the honest truth. Everybody started getting older and figuring stuff out in different ways, what they wanted to do and what they didn't want to do.
Understandable, of course, and I think we've all been there in one way or another, especially at that age. Just from from the other side of the wall here, from our perspective as fans, and fans who came of age a little bit younger after Human Remains had broken up, it's just interesting to hear that and to put in perspective of how young you guys really were in your life. And because you hear that album, and a lot of people, were just like, wow, these guys must have been really accomplished musical virtuosos and da-da-da. And, that's not always the case.
We didn't know.
So,
one of my favorite story ever is we played the QE2, I believe it is, in Albany, and somehow we were on that band One King Down's record release show. It was the most people we have ever played to by far. It was sold out, their hometown show. It was so packed, it was hard to go to the bathroom, like walk through the crowd. You had to push your way from one side of the venue to the other. Yeah. And we played, and there was not one clap or anything in between every song. It was dead silence. It was so uncomfortable that we just wound up racing through the whole set. Oh, man, that was really weird. And I was in the bathroom afterwards, and there was these two guys next to me. And I heard this conversation. Hey, man. One guy says to the other one, hey, man, what'd you think of that band? And then the other guy goes, I don't know. I think they were good, but I'm not sure.
It's the best.
Well, I mean, you said it was support for One King Down. I mean, I know that band. I remember them playing on Long Island when I was a teenager, man. I mean, more of like your more traditional, very tough, like mosh pit hardcore from the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that crowd with Human Remains in the '90s, yeah. I mean, that's a tough sell,
The
man.
beginning
with a
of
lot of those
crossover, you know? It's like that person's like, I'm not sure if I like this, and like somebody will tell him that it's cool, and then he'll buy the record, right? It's
Yeah,
like-
we played with Earth Crisis and Mouthpiece. We played with lots of weird bands. Dead Guy.
Oh, Dead Guy. Dead Guy, another New Jersey Dead Guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, another band, amazing band that should be in that conversation, I think, about the kind of eclectic musical New Jersey bands, even though not a death metal band.
Well, they came from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
There's two sides.
What?
There's two bands that are responsible for all that. The one is Ripping Corpse, and the other side is Rorschach.
Rorschach. Okay. Could you talk about them just a little bit? Did you see them live and things like that? Or?
We played our first show ever with them
Okay.
at a pizza place in New Jersey, in Middletown. It was us, Rorschach, and then Born Intense.
Wow, what a show, man.
And then Rorschach was like the most progressive, weird punk, hardcore thing going. And then, like, they were a big influence on the hardcore scene, punk scene.
Of course, yeah.
And then Keith went on to being Dead Guy, and then he did Kiss It Goodbye after that.
Yeah, yeah. And did you guys? I mean, Dead Guy was a little bit after Human Remains, right?
Yeah, and then Jim wound up playing bass in Dead Guy, the guitar player from Human Remains.
Yeah, yeah. And you actually did you join Discordance Axis while you were still in Human Remains, or slightly after?
Yeah, that was going at the same time.
Okay, so it was kind of like just a natural, Human Remains disbands, but now you got Discordance Axis, and I assume shortly after you're in Black Army Jacket too, right?
Yeah, and Discordance Axis was very sporadic. It wasn't like, we didn't get together and practice 3 days a week like Human Remains did.
Wow.
We'd get together every once in a while, and that was it, maybe once a week.
And what about Black Army Jacket? Because weren't those guys from New York City and Long Island?
Yeah, Rob called me up and asked me if I'd want to fill in for a tour. And I had so much fun, I joined the band and we did a record.
Could you maybe talk a little bit about Black Army Jacket? Because that's, as I said before, and just for the listeners, I've never talked about them much on the podcast, which I should change. But, they were always associated with Long Island because of a few members, and they were kind of like our only attachment to that power violence grindcore scene of the 90s, that Slap-a-Ham record scene, that, as I call it. Especially, the only like Long Island connection that we had to it. So a lot of us were very proud of Black Army Jacket.
Yeah, well, going back to Rorschach, Keith, the guitar player, he was also friendly with Henry from Revenant. They grew up together. So, we would see each other at shows and stuff. So I wound up talking to Keith, through Henry and seeing them at Lemore's and stuff like that. And then Rob, the singer of Black Army Jacket, was really good friends with Keith. So Keith kind of offered my name up when they were looking for someone, and gave it to Rob, and then Rob called me up. He was like, hey, we want to do this tour. You think you'd be into it? I go, yeah, I'll do it. It's cool. I started talking to those guys, and they're a lot of fun. We had a good time, and then just decided to, stick around and write a record.
Awesome, man. And where did the tour go to?
California, and then we did an East Coast run too. And then the band changed. Here's a cool segue. Then the band changed up a little bit. Carlos started singing. Rob had left the band, and then we added another guitar player, which was John Adabata from Time's Up. And then at the end, when Black Army Jacket was fizzling out, John and I started Burnt by the Sun like a week later.
Interesting. Okay. All right. A lot of connections here that I never made.
Yeah, it's always from one thing to the other. And Burnt by the Sun, the band name, comes from Black Army Jacket being stuck in Florida on the beach for 2 days because the van died.
Ooh.
Everybody got burnt by the sun. So the name's, it's not named after the Russian film. It's named after a goof.
Wow. Geez, Dave. I mean, Dave, I don't want to stop. I could keep talking to you for a while, man. But like I said, we're gonna be respectful of your time. We've been going for close to an hour here, and we usually close out with the album recommendations. But maybe we could we're gonna try to book you for a part 2 down the line, and just kind of.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds fun.
Yeah, dude, because we haven't even really tapped into Burnt by the Sun. You kind of just gave us the little what do you call it? The cliffhanger for the listeners, for the Burnt by the Sun fans,
You can hear the Segway just revving.
Yeah,
that bright gold Segway in the sun, just that engine in the distance.
I just lined it up.
Which, by the way, Dave, it's not every day I let a guest ride the Segway, but you did it beautifully. Excellent form there. Paul Blart himself would be proud. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
So
glistening, muscular Paul Blart. Yeah.
Playing blast beats. So before we get into the album recommendations that you're going to give our listeners, I got to ask right now, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about that the Black Army jacket stuck in the sun story? Because we do talk tour stuff on this podcast a lot.
Where the name came from?
Well, just maybe relate that experience of when the van broke down and why it took 2 days.
How painful was it?
We were stuck in Tampa, Florida, at my uncle's house. Luckily, for 2 days, we didn't have anything to do, so we just went to the beach. And Rich Hall was our roadie merch guy. He's the guy that booked CBGBs for a while afterwards. And everybody got such a bad sunburn. We're like, oh yeah, the next band's gonna be called Burnt by the Sun. I said that like goofing around, and then we wound up using it.
Wow.
And John's like my homie. He's like, I've been the best man at his wedding. That's my dude. So we've done a lot together.
Awesome, man. Really interesting to know where the name Burnt by the Sun. A lot of behind the scenes stuff, man. All right, so Dave. So without further ado, Dave, do you want to recommend anything, any classic, older musical release, any genre for our listeners, and then any newer one?
Man, I can't get enough. Like lately, I can't get enough of Seventh Son of the Seventh Son by Iron Maiden.
Wow.
Holy shit, is that record good?
Wow, sticking with the classics right off the bat.
Yeah, I love that album, man. It's so great. The drumming's great. Everything about it's awesome. Power Slave is my all-time favorite. Mm-hmm. And then, Somewhere in Time was really good. It was a little bit maybe too progressive and didn't have that swing. And then when they came back to Seventh Son, it all bounced back out. Goddamn, this record. I listened to it all. I listened to it a lot on this drive home, so it's real fresh in my memory.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've been exploring the kind of new wave of British heavy metal thing a lot more lately, more in depth than I ever did.
Always much stuff out there. It's great.
Yeah,
it's deep Maiden. That's deep, exploring Maiden. That's Tomb Raider Maiden.
Yeah.
They're my favorite heavy metal band ever. Them and Judas Priest.
Yeah, two great ones, man. Yeah, I mean Iron Maiden, obviously I know, man, but yeah, Judas Priest too. But so much great heavy metal from that movement. Wow, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. All right, man. And then, so take us up to date, Dave. What's something that's fairly new that's come out that you're into?
I just pre-ordered the new Dysrhythmia record, and I can't wait to get it because they're one of my favorite bands ever.
Bing bong, there you go. All right, man. So yeah, Dysrhythmia, and the listeners should know by now. We interviewed Colin Marston of Dysrhythmia, trying to reach out to other members of the band or whatever. Man, I think they're playing out coming up.
They're doing I think they're doing an album release show at Vitus.
Yes,
I think it's October 9th.
They're doing like a week of shows or something like that. We're on tour at the time. Otherwise, I would drive up for that because I love that. I saw their first show ever. Wow. They're one of my favorite bands. They always surprise me every time they put something out. It's awesome.
Could you talk a little bit about their first show, briefly?
Yeah, it was at Stalag 13. They opened up, they had like 4.5 songs, and then it was Discordant Axis, and then The Ruins from Japan.
Wow, man. That's awesome.
At the Squat in Philly. That place was amazing. I saw so many great shows there.
Oh, man, you say Japan. I didn't even get to my Melt Banana questions, Dave. We got to get you back. Mm-hmm. All right,
so,
man.
yeah, that new Dysrhythmia drops October 4th.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, October 4th, the new Dysrhythmia is going to be out.
Translation Lost Records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and look for them. They might be coming to a place by you. They're doing a short tour to promote that. And
if you like, highly creative, technical music with a heart and soul that pushes boundaries, dysrhythmia is your jam. Instrumental.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. And if you don't like that stuff, I don't know how you got this far into this episode. It doesn't make any sense. But awesome, and 2 awesome recommendations, Dave. Taking it back with the Seventh Son, man. Wow. All right. And Dysrhythmia, obviously, who you got to watch for coming up. And Dave,
Yeah.
you know,
One more quick thing.
please, yeah.
On the way out to Chicago, I listened to Kansas, The Point of No Return. Holy crap! What a progressive rock masterpiece that record is. If you don't
Yes.
know that record, you should listen to that too. It's insane.
Highly overlooked
The
band.
amount
Thank
of
you.
time and arrangements, everything that went out, it blew my mind because I never listened to it closely, and that record is amazing.
Yeah, Kansas, I think, a highly underrated progressive rock band, maybe because of the kind of southern rock, vibe you get off of them sometimes. I don't know. But
There was a massive hit that like stamped a generation, right?
yeah,
So,
it's hard to get past that
hard to get
wayward
past
son,
it,
man.
but that band is riffs. That band is just
Yeah.
beautiful riffs.
Yeah, no, but they've got some. He's right though. Like just for fans of that, if you're exploring like your Yes and you're more like prog bands, your Rush or whatever, that Kansas wormhole is deep, and there's some great material that didn't make it to commercial rock radio.
No doubt.
Yeah, man. Awesome recommendations, Dave. And Dave, obviously, people probably know you best nowadays from Municipal Waste, outside of your food endeavors. But what else is coming up, man? Do you want to plug anything? Any new releases? Anything you've been working on? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm working on a bunch of stuff, and actually, the next thing is the U.S. tour. The Municipal Waste is doing with Napalm Death and Sick of It All. It's in the month of October.
Amazing.
It's going to be a banger. I'm stoked on it.
That's
we love all those
amazing.
guys.
It's like
Yeah, and Take Offense is opening, and we really like those guys a lot. We're happy they're coming along.
cool, man. What a lineup, man, for you guys especially. Yeah, that's crazy.
Great. Got a New York date?
Yeah, and everybody's friendly with one another, and we all love each other's music, so it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, you're doing 2 dates at the Bowery, right?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff sold out, which is really good. It's really high attended tour so far.
Yeah, well, I mean it's funny because like you guys kind of like bridge a little bit of that gap between Sick of It All and Napalm Death in a way. It's like the crossover thing right there.
Yeah, it's perfect.
That's what I love about what's going on in heavy music today, man. A tour like that coming around.
Yeah, and
just a little bit of everything from the spectrum of heaviness.
And
It's
you're-
beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want diversity. I don't want to go see the same band 6 times in a row.
Yep.
and you're not likely to get back suplexed or clotheslined or anything or DDT'd in the mosh pit
Side Russian leg sweep.
just
Yeah,
for your
yeah.
hairstyle. It's not going to be for your hairstyle. It's going to be for some other reason. All right, Dave. So, Dave, just reassure the listeners. We're going to have you back, man. We're going to talk some shit about your other bands. We're going to eventually work our
I'd
way
love
up
to
to
come
the.
back.
Yeah, we're going to work our way up to the Municipal Waste territory. We're going to talk about craft beers. It's going to be great. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot. I can go on and on. Until next time, I'm excited.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dave Witte. We really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch, brother. Good talking to you.
Hey, guys, thanks again, man. I had a great time. Let's see you next time.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night,
Dave.
Dave.
Thanks,
Peace,
bud.
bro.
All right, take care.
Later, man.